Hey friends, Andrew here, hope you're well. So I've been using this top spec 13-inch M3 Air for about 3 months now. And in short, this remains the best laptop I've owned and have ever used daily. And if you're watching this, you've probably already seen all the launch reviews and benchmarks. This video isn't going to be that. I'll share my observations about battery life, workflow integrations, productivity, and just my new findings with this M3 Air after 3 months. So if you haven't bought one yet, or you're looking to upgrade your daily work laptop, perhaps this video will help you with that decision. So first, let's start with the cons that I've run into. So the very first negative that I want to share is a problem that I ran into a few weeks ago only. This problem isn't common, but it has to do with the E button on the keyboard. So in my case specifically, the actuation force needed to register that E button was really low. So what happened was when I was resting my fingers on the WASD on the keyboard, sometimes I'd accidentally, brush over the E button and it would register every single time. It was actually really frustrating because whenever I was typing out an email, it would add random E's into the word that I'm typing. I haven't found this problem online at all. So if you have run into this problem yourself, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, it's been an issue that hasn't been resolved. Even with some cleaning of the keyboard, I used a keyboard cleaning tool, didn't help it. So this problem might be unique to me, but yeah, it is something that I've run into the past few weeks. So the other issue that I've run into with the M3 Air over the past few months is actually its simultaneous charging and battery life. So this is interesting because the peak wattage and base wattage is different on the CPU and GPU. I believe it's a base wattage of 7 watts on the GPU and a base wattage of 2 watts on the CPU. The peak wattage of the CPU is 17 watts and the peak wattage of the GPU is 16 watts. So overall you get a combined peak of 33 watts and a combined base of 9 watts. So what this basically has meant for me is when I plug this M3 Air and I'm charging it at the same time, because the combined peak wattage is 33 watts, sometimes the included 35 watt charger was not enough to basically work intensely and also charge it back up to 100%. So to give you an example, when I was editing 4K footage on Final Cut Pro while running a whole bunch of different apps, that was basically drawing a lot of power from both the CPU and GPU. So at the same time, that provided 35 watt charger was not doing a good enough job to be able to pull enough power to also charge it back up. And I think that's something to note, especially if you're considering the faster 65 watt chargers out there. So yeah, that's been a little frustrating when I've been needing to juice it up while also continuing with my intense workload. Outside of that though, I have to say the battery life is great. It's rated for 18 hours of battery life, which is 6 hours more than Intel-based Air MacBook models. But I am averaging about 13 hours on this MacBook Air with different tasks, which is still great. It's actually pretty incredible. There's been days when I would go out and then work for half a day, come back home, forget to charge it, pick it up the next day, and still be able to get through half the day without charging it. So the efficiency is absolutely monstrous on this MacBook M3 Air, and it's a solid work laptop when it comes to battery life. When it comes to the speakers, I wish they packed more punch. They're great, don't get me wrong, but there are times when I forgot my AirPods back at home, for example, and I'd go out and I have to rely on the speakers for video editing, and it just did not pack enough punch in a busy cafe. But hey, to be fair, the 15-inch does get much better speakers. That has 6 speakers with force cancelling woofers, whereas the 13-inch that I have has 4 speakers. And then there's the new anodization process, which I've talked about in the previous review video. It's great. It definitely shows much less fingerprints, as you can see. But, however, when it comes to the keyboard shows a ton of fingerprints, basically the same as the previous M2 Air midnight color that I had. If you have a thing for like grimy keyboards, yeah, you're gonna have to wipe it down very consistently or wash your hands like every hour basically. But honestly, that's like the overall cons that I have for the M3 Air over the past few months. It's not that much and most of them are solvable. Fingerprints, the speakers, the simultaneous charging, and that keyboard issue, which I think was unique to me. That's about it. So let's talk about the pros because, there's a reason why I call this the best laptop that I've ever used as a daily driver. So this is the top spec 13-inch with 16 gigabytes memory and 512 gigabyte storage. And the extra few $100s spent on that RAM upgrade alone has been the holy grail, because coming from an M2 Air with 8 gigabytes of RAM, I was scared to use Chromium apps. And I know we shouldn't be using Chromium apps in general when it comes to the Mac ecosystem. I still prefer it for my own reasons. I'm able to use those apps, no problem at all on this configuration. So that 16 gigabyte jump with the M3 processor has been absolutely amazing. It breezes through my entire workflow. So my opinion from my first review has not changed when it comes to the RAM upgrade. Highly recommend that RAM upgrade because I feel like 8 gigabytes will still be limiting for most users. And speaking about the M3 processor with that RAM, it has been powerful enough for me to dock onto my desk setup system. And it's been such a pleasure hooking this up to the Pro XDR display and using it, and also still have that portability by just unplugging it and going. It is a great solution. And of course, if you have a dual monitor setup, this M3 Air can now support dual 5K displays. And so that's great. And don't worry, for you M3 Pro users out there, I believe Apple has released a software update a couple months ago where you can now use 5K dual displays as well. And so rest easy, you're not one-upped by the M3 Air. And then there's all the other creature comforts of this laptop that I absolutely love. The great trackpad, the great display, the webcam and microphones are amazing. And then of course, there's the form factor of the 13-inch. And yeah, it's like altogether, it's just a really, really good laptop when I'm traveling, when I'm working outside. It is constantly the laptop that I reach for whenever I am out and off of my desk. So safe to say, M3 Air, amazing laptop. But we have to talk about the growing competition for a moment, because I'm surprised I'm saying this myself. There may be Windows laptops out there, or just around the corner, I should say, that you and I may want to consider over the M3 Air. And specifically, the Snapdragon X Elite that some are saying are going to bring the fight right to the MacBooks and possibly even win, according to early benchmarks out there. So this is going to be an interesting time because there is so much going on with the Snapdragon X Elite. So you might have heard about Microsoft's build event recently, and that's where they announced Dell laptops like the XPS 13 and the new Surface laptops that feature the Snapdragon X Elite chipsets. And we're already starting to see better multi-thread performance than the M3 lineup. And that's pretty incredible, but at the same time, I don't think it's that surprising. The Snapdragon X Elite uses 12 big cores versus the 4 big and 4 small cores on the M3 or specific M3s. The only question here is if the Snapdragon X Elites and the laptops that feature that chipset can compete on price and efficiency. Because if it's more efficient and it's also cheaper, there may be good reason to hold off on the M3 MacBooks and take a serious look at Windows laptops that feature the new X Elite chipset. But ultimately, let's be honest, it's going to depend on real world usage and power and thermal constraints with devices that use the X Elite chip. And that's still something that, of course, MacBooks have over Windows laptops, that is built unibody, completely in-house, and from the processor all the way to the build itself. So it's not definitive yet that it is a better chipset overall. I did want to mention the Snapdragon X Elite though, because it is looking to take the fight up to the M3 and the M3 Air. But let's take it back to the M3 Air before we get too excited. Comparing it to the M2 Air, it is a great laptop, but it is more an incremental upgrade. It's not drastic over the M2 Air. In my opinion, the M3 Air is still geared towards those of you who may be on an Intel Mac still, because if you're on an M series Mac, chances are you're pretty happy with the performance and you don't need the spec bump. Most people don't need to be upgrading their laptop every second year. It's more like every 4 to 5, maybe 6 years. And that's particularly the case when Apple has a pretty decently generous support cycle of up to like 5 years for their MacBooks. And so, like I always say, if your laptop is still serving you, there's no need to upgrade it. The M1, M2, M3 Air laptops are brilliant, and it is my go-to everyday laptop. It's the laptop that I recommend for anyone asking me about a daily laptop. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, at least until the Snapdragon X Elite actually delivers. So we're going to have to wait until then. But before then, the M3 Air, honestly, still a brilliant laptop. It's served me so well over the past 3 months. But yeah, I'm keen to see the competition being taken up against the M3 Air. Let's see what happens. I'm definitely going to have to pick up a Windows laptop with the Snapdragon X Elite and see how it actually performs. Because ultimately, if Snapdragon is bringing the competition to the M3s, I think that's ultimately good because competition is good. What it means is better prices and more options for us customers. So win-win at the end of the day. If you have the M3 Air yourself, let me know if you've been enjoying the M3 Air as much as I have, taking it out everywhere as much as I have. And yeah, if you've made it to the very end of this video, comment the code word AIRY and I'll give it a like for watching till the end. I'll also leave a video right up here on the MacBook Pro M3 that I've been using as well, in case you're interested in that laptop. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.